Hi, I'm Stephen Knowles, and I'm the General Manager here at the Buttonwillow Civil War Theater. Thank you so much for watching. We, over the last few weeks, have been sharing your Civil War family stories. And to wrap up the year, I'm going to share my Civil War family story. I have a couple of different relatives who served in the war, and today I'm going to tell the story of one. Second Corporal William B. Spurlock of the 55th Georgia Infantry. He was from the small town of Shellman, Georgia. That's way down south near Albany, not very far from the Alabama border, near a town Cuthbert. And during the war, when the war first broke out, he was 34 years old. And the Confederate Congress signed a conscription act that said every man 18 to 35 had to join, or they would be drafted. And so he was just under the age cutoff, and he had to join. Now, if you were drafted, there was a little bit of a stigma involved. You know, you had to be drug into it. But if you joined up, you and all the men from your town could form a unit together, and that's what the men of Randolph County, Georgia did. They formed the 55th Georgia Infantry, and they took off to fight the war. They were captured in September the 9th of 1863, actually not far from here, about an hour and a half drive from here, at a place called Cumberland Gap. That is where Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia meet. It's a national park today. You can go and visit it. And it was very strategically important, everybody thought, but it never really turned out to be very strategically important. You can find out all about that probably at the park's website. But it was captured by the Yankees, reinforced, nobody came. Then they abandoned it, the rebels went in and reinforced it, and nobody came. And then they abandoned it, it went back and forth. So my ancestor happened to be in one of the groups that was there holding the fort, and they thought there was a much larger force of northern troops coming at them, and so they surrendered. After they surrendered, they discovered that they were actually facing a smaller force than they were, but at that point it was too late, and they were shipped off. This was right towards the end of the prisoner exchanges, and so some of the men were paroled. Now, when you were paroled, you had to sign a document saying that you would go back home and you would not serve in a combat role. And so these men became guards at Andersonville Prison, the notorious Andersonville Prison in South Georgia, which was a very bad place to be at that time, even for the guards, because the South was running out of things, including food, and even the guards were starving to death at Andersonville. But my ancestor was not in that group. He was in the group that was sent to the Andersonville of the North, Camp Douglas in Chicago, Illinois. He was in a group of men who were starving to death across the street from the University of Chicago. And he was there from October of '63. That winter was a particularly brutal one. And at that point, men had already tried to escape by tunneling out under the barracks. So all the barracks had been put up on stilts. So now the wind was blowing not only around and over and through the barracks, but under as well. So it could not have been a very comfortable time. Men were dying of typhus, starvation, cold. But my ancestor persevered. And on June the 18th, 1865, after the war was over, he was released. And they were offered transportation home in exchange for an oath of allegiance to the United States. And the men called that swallowing the dog, and they weren't going to do it. And so he and his surviving companions there from the 55th Georgia Infantry headed off for home. And they walked 900 miles from Chicago, Illinois to Shellman, Georgia. It took 3 months. But he survived, and he actually lived a nice long life. His son, whom I'm descended from, was already born. He was born in 1857. He was my great-great-grandfather. He moved to Dallas, Texas. His younger brother, who was born 9 months after Dad got home from the war, moved to Frostproof, Florida. And 150 some odd years later, we're still in touch. My kids and I went to Disney a couple years ago, and we stayed one night with my second cousin, twice removed, who is the grandson of the man who moved to Florida. And now, of course, we did all that for 150 years without the benefit of Facebook. Now through Facebook, the Spurlock family can keep in touch very well. So that's my Civil War family story, the story of Second Corporal William B. Spurlock of the 55th Georgia Infantry.